Hello world, this is SPARTIEcast.
Welcome to SPARTIEcast, episode 15, brought to you by the Social and Psychological Research on Technology Interaction Effects Lab, the SPARTIE Lab at Michigan State University. I'm Dr. Robby Ratan, your host and director of the lab. Episode 15, we're getting up there in numbers. 15, 3 times 5, a good age to be wild and crazy. The element is phosphorus, which is highly reactive, just like the excitement I feel about the topic for today. Ready Player Me. I speak with CEO Timmu Tõke about the company WOLF3D that is making Ready Player Me. It's this cross-platform avatar system. It's got a vision for using the same avatar across not just multiple games, but also professional applications, social media applications. They've got 200 partners around the industry, and we talk about how people relate to their avatars and how Ready Player Me can facilitate different types of relationships. He makes a really good point in the professional context. A good avatar is an avatar that you don't talk about, but in the gaming context, you want to talk about it. You want to flex with your avatar. It's an interesting idea. And I'm really, really grateful to start pivoting this podcast toward people in industry working on these media technologies that are so relevant to our research here in the field of communication and technology, interactions with kind of humans and computers and avatars, right? That this doesn't just happen in a bubble. The developers are feeling their way through the markets, through the kind of pressures of technological constraints in order to develop these products. And so I think by understanding the developers and the business minds behind technologies like Ready Player Me, we can be better researchers. And then maybe we can also contribute to the development instead of just including a single paragraph at the end of our papers, which says implications for design are, and nobody reads that section who actually designs things if you write it in a journal aimed toward communication scholars, right? So therein lies the motivation behind talking to the CEO of WOLF3D. I hope you enjoy the conversation because I certainly did. All right, I am so thrilled to be here with Timmu Tõke, CEO of WOLF3D, maker of Ready Player Me, the avatar creation system that has impressed me most in many years. So Timmu, thank you so much for joining the podcast, the SPARTIEcast for my lab. Can you tell us a little bit about, tell us about
Great
yourself.
To be here,
Yeah, where are you? You're in Estonia?
I'm in Estonia. Thank you for the kind words, by the way, and great to be here. I'm currently in Estonia. That's where I'm from. That's kind of where half of the team is based, and the rest is around Europe. But I spend most of my time in the US when there's no pandemics and stuff around.
Sure.
But currently trying to figure out a way to get back conveniently without having to be, quarantining somewhere.
Of course. If you could only send an avatar in your place.
Yeah, that would be easier.
One fine day. So we were talking a little bit before recording here about the vision of WOLF3D, kind of cross-platform avatars around the media landscape. So can you tell me a bit about that? And feel free to repeat what you said before.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so what we see is that the Metaverse is coming, and there's more and more virtual applications that people use every year. They spend more time in virtual worlds, and it's clear that the Metaverse is not going to be like kind of one app owned by one company. It's going to be a collection of thousands or millions of different virtual worlds that people use for different applications, like for games, for work, for collaboration. And in order to put those worlds kind of together, link them together, some kind of cross-game services need to exist. And avatars and identity is the most important of them. So being able to create an avatar that you love and kind of transport it with you across many different virtual experiences is we think, the very key thing that needs to exist for the metaverse to really exist. So that's what we're focused on, kind of building interoperable identities that people can travel with across the metaverse.
And as far as I've seen, nobody else is really doing it at the level you're doing it. I took 5 minutes to make my avatar from the browser on my phone. I didn't even have to install an app. That was great onboarding, right? I'm taking this photo. I've got an avatar. I took a few extra minutes to tweak it. Even still, 10 minutes later, I've got it in VR chat. I'm embodying it. You've got partnerships with animes. I use them to put it into Zoom. I can run it with my students. You said you have something like 200 partnerships now?
Yeah, 200 games and apps that are integrated today and growing like 40% month over month. So
and you have to go one at a time. You approach the game and you say, hey, can we kind of use the .avatar protocol or however you use?
Yeah, so like it's actually a big majority of that is inbound, a very big majority. So so people just see our avatars in different games or like different experiences, and then they can just reach out to use them themselves. And like that's because like the kind of the avatar tools that we built are useful for game developers in general. So like even if you don't need interoperable avatars, a lot of games still need an avatar system. So you either spend 6 months on inventing your own avatar system, or you can integrate ReadyPlayMe in a couple of days and you're good to go. So that's kind of the problem we're solving for developers today. And over time, it becomes more of a kind of a network and a platform that kind of links different worlds together. And we're already doing that between, the kind of the small metaverse we've created over the past year or so. And that's kind of, only going to increase over time.
Absolutely. Research in my field suggests that there are a few different ways people relate to their avatars. So some people might relate to the avatar as me. They want it to look as much like me as possible. In other contexts, though, you want to inhabit a character that has its own identity. You might feel like, the guide for that character, you're controlling Mario or Lara Croft. And then the third common relationship we often talk about is the object. It's just a thing to help me get around, right? It's like a car in a game. If I don't identify with the car, though I've made arguments in my research that cars are like avatars. We can have these three types of relationships, and you can have, a little bit of object. It's got utility, but it's also a little bit of me, or a little bit of its own identity and a little bit of me. Some people talk to their cars, right? Like they treat it like another, but it's also, of course, it gets them A to B. So those are the three types of relationships here. Ready Player Me seems to be designed toward the first, the avatar as self types of identification, right?
Yeah.
But what about, let's say you're going cross-platform to games in which you need an avatar that kind of has its own narrative. Like, how do you combine game narrative with customized avatar?
Yeah, that's a great question, and very important point. So we generally see that games that have a very strong narrative are obviously they have a storyline, and you want to kind of go to someone else's story and play through it in your own way. It's kind of a movie in a way. And we think that kind of industry stays the same. You still want to play a character in those types of games, and you want to kind of go into the story and experience it as like a movie. So, and we're not trying to change that. But in other experiences, which are more social, that you kind of experience with your friends and people you communicate with in real life also, or colleagues, there you want to be yourself, or a version of yourself. Like what we've seen is that people don't want to be like a replica of themselves. They want to be like a realistic version of themselves. They want to be recognizable to themselves and to other people that they know, but it's kind of a version that they create themselves. They kind of curate their identity in a way. And also, like, we do offer people an option to create an avatar that is not connected with your own identity. You can just make one without the selfie and kind of use some customization options. We have some masks, and definitely we plan to expand on that in the future. But kind of personal avatars is our background. That's where we coming from, and that's kind of the missing part on the market. Like it doesn't really exist. No great personal avatar solution exists. And that's why we built it. And that's why we built Ready Pay Me on top of that.
Yeah. So you also mentioned IP from other, like Fortnite has done such a great job of integrating IP across the landscape. We see movies like the Lego movie or Ready Player One, right? They're integrating IP across different movies and games. And so can you see kind of a flipped direction here where instead of integrating the IP into the game through the avatars, you're integrating kind of the IP into the avatars. So maybe I pay for the, I don't know, the Avengers set of avatars, and now I can use them across games because I've licensed to the company through Ready Player Me, and that kind of gives me a continuity of identity, which is kind of one of the goals here. But it also gives me this street cred of, oh, I've got this cool character, right?
Exactly. It's all about that. It's kind of opening up many worlds for the same avatar and for the same assets. So you buy, Avengers outfit, you can use it in many different experiences. For the sellers of that outfit, for the IP holders, the avatar that they sell on Ready Pay Me is more valuable for the user because it has more utility across many different experiences, not just one game. And if you stop playing one game, you can continue using it in another experience. Probably there needs to be some kind of customization to the style of the asset, depending on the experience and type of world. But overall, yeah, I think the ownership of assets needs to kind of it needs to exist in across platforms, across games.
Sure. And you're mentioning games here, but let's maybe take a step into the professional world. I think it's so cool that I can turn on my virtual camera over here, and then I can switch the camera in Zoom, and boom, I am an avatar right here that I created with Ready Player Me. And it looks pretty good. I mean, I did not spend much time making this at all. I think some of the like behavioral algorithms, of course, this is animes that I'm using to run your avatar. So I'll try to give some feedback to animes about their behavioral algorithms to make kind of professional meetings a little easier. But what do you think, about other outside of games uses of your avatars?
So like from our current 200 partners, probably like, I don't know, 70 or 80 are some kind of a professional focus. They have some kind of a professional focus, so like meetings, events, things like that. So like,
oh wow, that's a big proportion actually.
It is, yeah, because we started from that because we launched as the pandemic kind of, started really. So everything meetings related was like booming, and it was a great first thing to focus on. So that's what we did, and so definitely there's a lot of uses for avatars in professional settings, even on normal video calls, but obviously in VR, virtual events. We're having some team meetings also in 3D spaces, and it helps kind of, it's just an interactive experience. You can form groups. It's like spatial. If you have like a, team meeting with like 60 people on Zoom, then it's like a webinar, like one person speaks and everyone listens. If you have like a 3D, if you're meeting in a 3D space, then you can actually work around and kind of simulate reality a little bit better in that sense.
Absolutely. So what should we wear? Avatars are like clothes. And in a professional setting, we're expected to wear professional clothes. I mean, I'm in my alien t-shirt, but I would probably still wear this while teaching. I teach while riding my skateboard. My students know I'm pretty relaxed. Nice. But if I go to a faculty meeting, of course, I button up the shirt, maybe even wear a tie if I'm giving a talk, right? So what do you think about kind of different levels of professional avatars? Is that something you guys are preparing?
Yeah. So first, I think like right now, still a lot of the platform kind of builders, the meeting app builders, let's say, they want to enforce like a dress code themselves. So like in business meetings, usually, which was kind of surprising for us also, a good avatar is an avatar you don't talk about, kind of. So when you go to a business meeting, you kind of want to get to the business. You want to speak about the subject. You don't want to be like, oh, wow, that's a cool hat. Wow, it's like, so like that, you don't want that to be a distraction, basically. So it needs to be quite professional and not like not too extraordinary in some way. But I think overall, like those things will be more flexible, and people will, I don't have a dress code in my house. I just wear the stuff that, like, I think is appropriate to wear. And I think the same thing is going to happen in virtual worlds over time. Although if you don't have a real identity in a world, then obviously people act a little crazy. So yeah, I think there
I
will
think
be many options.
cultural norms will kind of adapt, and the acceptable avatar will kind of emerge. I love that quote. I wrote it down. Maybe we'll put it in the episode notes. A good avatar is an avatar you don't talk about. That's great.
Yeah.
It kind of sinks into the background. You treat it naturally. And as we know from research in my field, people are very psychologically open to responding to technology as if it's a human. If it just has some human characteristics, we'll talk to it. We'll have a team-like bond with it. We'll appreciate politeness cues with it as if it's human, even if we very well know that it's not. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
I would add to that, it's like in a business setting, that's the case. If you want to like just kind of be very practical about the way you use avatars for meetings, right? What we're trying to do for consumers is like we do want them to talk about them. We want them to be cool and awesome, right? And that needs to be something you go and you flex with, right? So that's why people buy skins in games. They want to show other people how cool they are and how cool their skins are. So there's kind of two sides which are very different. Like if you're a consumer, you go to a virtual experience, you want to be noticed, and if you're a business customer, it's kind of different. Yeah.
Wow. That's a really interesting point. And I think there's a theoretical model here that 10 years from now, students in my field will be testing. They'll be looking at the avatars people use. We'll probably develop motivational scales for like, what context do you use it in? What's the culture of that context? And then, we can content analyze the types of avatars people use. So it's predicted here by Timmu. And I think you're definitely onto something. Makes a lot of sense. What about the education context? So it's kind of in between professional and entertainment in some ways. I mean, it's certainly not entertainment, but it's more relaxed. It's more informal. When I have students, I'm going to teach a class in virtual reality this spring, wearing goggles. We'll probably be in VR chat, try out some other apps. I'd love to have them use Ready Player Me avatars. Actually, I will certainly have them use them. So what do you think can be done to kind of harness avatars as an educational tool?
Yeah. So our avatars are used in education in multiple different ways. Like it's it's just kind of VR lessons, which is kind of like a normal class, but they try to replicate that in VR. And there people just use all kinds of I haven't really learned what's the best avatar for that. But I assume it's more playful than the business one. Then avatars are just interesting, cool things for kids to try out to learn about the new technology. So we have some schools that reach out that are just going to use avatars to build a simple AR app, for example, together with the teacher. So they create an avatar for themselves, like they write a couple lines of code and they just kind of see their avatar in AR, just to kind of teach them the principles of how this stuff works. We just had a student actually reach out to us one day that was trying to put something together for a school project with Ready Player Me. It was quite cute, and we helped him build this app.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's really cool that you helped him. So where should listeners send their kids to go and use a tool to learn to program avatars a bit?
Yeah, I mean, Ready Player Me, you can just try out at readyplayer.me.
Ready Player, and you mean like beyond creating an avatar, there's like coding tools too?
There's docs there, so there's integration examples for each platform, so you can kind of see some examples. And we're also starting to post some like open source examples of different kinds of avatar apps, like a face tracking app kind of template, so you can take that and you can build on that. So kind of we're doing that stuff as well, but right now it's mostly like kind of Ready Player Me integration examples.
That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And I think I'm definitely going to recommend that to my students. In our program at MSU, we have students who are like me, who are a bit more on the psychological side, but we also have many students who want to go into the games industries and also information science. They want to work in technology, social media. I think many of them are learning to code, or at least they're well served by understanding how technological development works. And so, yeah, this I think is a great way to introduce them through a tool that people find super kind of personal, right? Like making an avatar really is a personal experience. Last question, and thank you so much for all of your time here. My most interesting, the phenomenon that I study the most is called the Proteus Effect. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, so people conform to the characteristics of the avatar. I have this theory that influence through avatars will be stronger than influence through almost every other medium, as long as it's done kind of with in line with the other lessons that we know. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if I'm trying to get you to eat healthily, and I show you a message of these people kind of either having good consequences if they eat well, or bad consequences if they eat poorly, and there's a narrative, there's relatable characters like that will convince some people, right? That's how persuasion and advertising works. But now, if I integrate the avatar into that experience, so it's you're controlling it, and your own avatar is changing through its health behaviors, or through some sort of interaction with the environment, you're much more likely to change your own self-concept, and that will last, especially if you continually use that avatar across multiple platforms throughout your entire day. The avatar becomes the mechanism of behavioral influence that is potentially quite powerful. So
I totally agree.
You totally agree. So have you thought about then integrating? I mean, how do you feel about advertising? It might make you worried, right? Oh, are we going to be seen as a company that's trying to manipulate people through the avatars? Or can we help people by getting healthy behaviors, or plugging into kind of campaigns for educational motivation? Like, what's your feeling about using avatars as this kind of tool?
Yeah. So first, we luckily don't need to do any ads for our survival, because avatars are, the perfect business model is selling stuff for the avatars, and that's a gigantic market. So it's a very it's a transactional business in that sense. We don't need to, sell anyone's data or sell them anything, doing ads. So, so basically that's that. And the other side is like, we're a tools provider. So our goal is to make the best avatar tools for developers around the world, and support them in building whatever they want to build. So sometimes if we think about the cool use case, kind of we nudge it in that way. Maybe we find someone that is kind of close and pitch them the idea, or try to find companies that are working on this and kind of integrate with them. But I haven't really seen anything like that around yet. There is one app that we had a chat with, and it's called like Better Me or something like that, and it's kind of like using your avatar and trying to motivate you to do some like exercise every day and things like that. And then the avatar is kind of the visuals of the avatar improve or decay depending on if you kind of hit your goals. And like there's a meditation, and it's generally kind of trying to teach you like good habits, and have it as an avatar in it. We haven't yet integrated with them. I'm not sure if they're launched, but that's one thing I have came up when I thought about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. It's the main reason I'm so excited, taking a step back here, to talk to someone, the CEO of a company doing avatars, to kind of connect it with my understanding of the research, is I don't know the market side as well. I know the psychological side, but not the market side. So you make a point, right? Like, we've already got this business model. We don't need advertising at this point. But like you say, no one's doing this yet. All media industries are in the end supplemented by advertising dollars. And so it's kind of an inevitable outcome. And so,
it
yeah.
isn't
Go
like,
ahead.
Definitely. I mean, when you have impressions, you can kind of sell stuff. So, but in the metaverse, so to say, in virtual worlds, virtual goods, I hope, are a much better business than ads. But I'm sure there will be ad-driven things as well. Wherever you have impressions, you can sell them, right? So, but I think, yeah, like for companies like Fortnite, for example, it makes sense to sell virtual goods and do that well, and that's a kind of an honest way to make your money, and they're making enough of it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I hope that will kind of translate to the rest of the metaverse also.
Absolutely. I hope so too. I can imagine a two-tier system, premium avatars, where you're kind of free of that influence. But then if you want a cool avatar and you don't want to pay the $5 or $250, whatever it is, in the future, then maybe you take on an avatar that does have some hidden message that's designed to influence you, or maybe it's overt. But I imagine actually hidden messages might work well in this context. So we'll see. It's a brave new world, but it's an awesome new world too that you're ushering in. And thank you so much, Timmu, for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was our interview with Timmu Tõke, CEO of WOLF3D, maker of Ready Player Me, an awesome product, I think poised to at least facilitate the early stages of cross-platform avatars in our media landscape. It made me think about my personal experience with avatars and how at the end there, we talked about the Proteus Effect and how excited I am about the potential to influence people in positive ways, motivate them to engage in their education more, or make healthier choices, or be more confident about themselves, reduce toxicity in online environments. All of these, to me, seem like really exciting areas in which we could kind of harness the potential of avatars toward behavioral influence. But lest we forget, the fundamental, as I talked about with Dr. Robby Ratan, the fundamental business model for media is advertising, right? Advertising supplements the cost of producing media. And so in these early stages, we have this kind of pay to engage, this pay to use avatar type system, though of course it's free also, but you can pay for premium. But eventually, perhaps the advertising model will find its way into this technology as well, for better or worse. I mean, advertising does serve a valuable purpose in diminishing the marginal cost of your product, thereby allowing you to expand who's getting it, right? So more people get newspapers, more people are able to access the news on television. Presumably more people can connect on a social media network that has positive externalities, effects on the people in that network, because it's all advertising supported. And maybe we're going to see that in avatars as well. And it's going to be related to the Proteus effect. And in some ways that's a little scary, right? It's a new mode of influence that people might not be ready for. And so as I briefly mentioned in my rap about the Proteus effect, we're going to need new forms of media literacy. And so I don't think Timmu Tõke is on a mission to indoctrinate the world with ideas that they would otherwise find unpleasant through avatar-based advertising. Oh, that's a mouthful. That's going to cause many slip ups in the future. But I think other companies might in the future. So we'll see how this unfolds. It is super exciting. It is ripe for research in our field. It is ripe for people in our field to kind of connect with the technologists on the ground like Timmu. I hope to connect with more through this podcast. So yeah, that was a great interview. Thank you for listening. If you're interested, if you like what you heard, please follow, like, download, subscribe, and tell your mom, dad, neighbor, maybe your cubicle mate or your cohort mates who are interested in this topic. Tell your old professor, your English professor, if they're interested in narrative and transportation, there's a connection here, or your psychology professor, or the grad student, the TA you had a crush on. Tell them all. Tell them all about our podcast, please. And then we can expand, and with expansion in this podcast, we can get higher and higher profile guests to join and tell us about their slice of the media technology world. Thank you to our producers, also George McNeil and Taylor Halterman. Thank you most of all to you, the listener, for listening to SPARTIEcast. Hope to see you next time, where we will be discussing video games and avatars and everything nice around that. But I don't know specifically at this moment.
Thank you for tuning into SPARTIEcast. Goodbye, world.